Let's do it. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting of the Board of Supervisors to order. While the room will be open to the public, due to the size of the meeting room and social distancing requirements, no more than 30 attendees other than county staff will be allowed in the room at one time. Per the Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Executive Order 63, all persons over the age of 5 that do not have a precluding medical condition are asked to wear a face covering. Brandy, will you take roll, please?
Supervisor Lewis.
Present.
Supervisor Day.
Here.
Supervisor Ayers. Here. Supervisor McDaniel.
Here.
Chairman Lyons.
Here. At this time, we'll have an invocation by Mr. Lewis, followed by the pledge.
We ask for guidance for the people of our county and commonwealth in the ways of justice and peace, that we may honor one another and serve the common good. And we seek a reverence for the land, that we may use its resources rightly in the service of others. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will hold public comments near the beginning of the meeting. We'll do our best to take citizen comments remotely, and there are 2 options for citizens to offer comments. To join by telephone, you may dial into one of the numbers listed on the county website. Webinar ID and password are there for your convenience. Citizens wishing to simply view the meeting live or after the fact can do so on the Rockbridge County Board of Supervisors YouTube channel, also available on the county website. If you wish to make a citizen comment as a Zoom meeting participant, you will use the raise your hand feature. You can press the raise your hand button on the bottom of your Zoom window or press *9 if you're calling in by phone. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to request that that one item be moved up, item 11, to the beginning of the general items, and that is the VDOT request for road abandonment, road right-of-way abandonment.
Okay. Any other changes? And the agenda will be approved as amended. We have no recognitions tonight. We are ready to go into the citizen comments. This time we will welcome citizens to comment. To make a comment, please follow these guidelines. Sign up to speak on a citizen's comment sign-up sheet. Once your name is called, address the board from the podium, beginning by clearly stating your name and magisterial district. This is an opportunity for citizens to provide comments. Please do not expect the board to respond to your questions or engage in a dialogue. If you have questions, please ensure that you have entered your contact information on the citizen's comment sign-up sheet, and the staff will do their best to respond to your questions as soon as possible. Citizens are respectfully requested to keep comments brief and not to speak for more than 3 minutes. The same rules applies to those attending virtually. Once your name is called, please state your full name, magisterial district, and the contact information for the record. There's a timer provided at the podium. It'll go from green to yellow with 30 seconds remaining, and it'll buzz and turn red when your 3 minutes are up. All right, so at this time we have, I know, at least one signed up for citizen comment.
Mr. Chairman, we have Mark Reed, Lexington City. The topic is DSS.
Mr. Reed.
Good evening. I'm Mark Reed. Mark Hudson Reed is my full name. I live in Lexington City. My contact information is MRMARK HREED. My phone number is area code 540-784-6689. Been a while since I spoke here in front of you all. Want to thank Mr. Suter for reading my letter to you at the last meeting. I frankly was caught short in terms of writing that letter. I didn't realize because I hadn't been paying attention that you met on that day and at that time. So I'm going to piggyback on that letter that I wrote, and I appreciate your attention on that. Putting DSS within a 3-mile radius of 64 and 81 is foolish and dangerous. Our most vulnerable citizens are running out of time. Putting DSS within a 3-mile radius of 64 and 81 is foolish and dangerous. Our most vulnerable citizens are running out of time. Putting DSS within a 3-mile radius of 64 and 81 is foolish and dangerous. Our citizens, our most vulnerable citizens, are running out of time. Putting DSS within a 3-mile radius of 64 and 81 is foolish and dangerous. Our most vulnerable citizens are running out of time. Putting DSS within a 3-mile radius of 64 and 81 is foolish and dangerous. Our citizens, our most vulnerable citizens, are running out of time. Putting DSS within a 3-mile radius of 64 and 81 is foolish and dangerous. Our most vulnerable citizens are running out of time. Putting DSS at the intersection of 64 and 81 is foolish and dangerous. Our most vulnerable citizens are running out of time. Putting DSS at the intersection of 64 and 81 is foolish and dangerous. Our most vulnerable citizens are running out of time. Putting DSS within a 3-mile radius of 64 and 81 is foolish and dangerous. Our most vulnerable citizens are running out of time. Putting DSS at the intersection of 64 and 81 within a 3-mile radius is foolish and dangerous. Our most vulnerable citizens are running out of time. Putting DSS within a 3-mile radius of 64 and 81 is foolish and dangerous. Our most vulnerable citizens are running out of time. Putting DSS within a 3-mile radius of 64 and 81 is foolish and dangerous. Our most vulnerable citizens are running out of time. Putting DSS at the intersection of 64 and 81 within a 3-mile radius is foolish and dangerous. Our most vulnerable citizens are running out of time.
Thank you, Mr. Reed.
My time's up.
Yes, sir.
I'm not the only one. Our most vulnerable citizens' time is up too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Ann Russick. District is Buffalo, and the topic is schools.
Good evening, Ann Russick, Buffalo District. My contact information is on the sheet. I wanted to thank you, first of all, for not raising our taxes. I know that was hard, but it's nice to see our supervisors working together, and at least for this year, sparing the citizens that increase. So thank you. The subject of schools, the reason I'm here is because I've started to receive notices, both personally and amongst friends and other constituents, asking me, not just me alone, but other people. These are broad-based people talking or asking to support them in homeschool and private schools proposals, specifically that more of the homeschools are coming together and want to serve. I guess form like not a conglomerate, but they want to have a title with their homeschools. And then I've also received applications, or not applications, but requests from private citizens asking to support private schools that they want to get started. And so I hope that the supervisors are being updated, if not by the school board, but about somebody, about the fact that so many parents seem to be so unhappy or concerned about the education that their students are getting in the public school system. I think the county, I believe that parents should have a choice to educate their children however they want. But being a smaller county with a small population, I'm concerned for the community as a whole and what those children and all of us lose by so many fragmented educational systems going on, with children not ever knowing each other, not knowing people within their community. It's kind of isolating in a way. So, but I'm not an educator. I'm just telling you some of my concerns. I'm also concerned with what percentage of the pupils have left the school system since COVID has started. And is anybody keeping track of the dropout numbers? Of course, we wouldn't know because we haven't had graduation yet this year. But I'm wondering, how do we monitor that? And if so many schools if more children started going into private and homeschool situations, who would monitor that? Would they be requested to notify anybody if within their own schools that students were dropping out at 14 or 15 years of age? And so I'm concerned about that. And I'm also just wondering, why are parents turning to these options? Is it, I always thought that parents went to that kind of an option because they were worried about what their children weren't learning in school. And so you would go to a private school maybe for religious reasons, or just thinking that the curriculum wasn't up to speed with what you wanted for your child. But now I'm starting to become concerned that they want to take their children out of the system because they're concerned about what their children are being taught. And I think that's an issue that as a community we need to address. Why are so many parents, well, first of all, I don't use the word so many, let's find out how many and why are they so invested in taking their children out of the school system. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nobody else has signed up.
Do we have anybody electronically?
No, sir.
Okay, any emails?
No, sir.
Okay. And we'll close the public comments. I'm sure everyone's had a chance to review the minutes from the March 18th, 2021 joint meeting minutes and the March 22nd, 2021 work session and regular meeting minutes. Are there any changes to those minutes? Hearing none. And we have a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay. Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Ms. Ayers?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. The county financial package, Mr. Bolster.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. If you go to your financial package, board docs agenda, you'll see that there is a financial memorandum that communicates activities for the Commissioner of the Revenue and the Treasurer. I'll go ahead and start with the Commissioner of the Revenue. They continue with their monthly activity, which is reconciling the DMV report with local records to confirm actual registered vehicles. They are prepared to move forward on the real estate tax book once the budget is adopted and then any changes in the tax rates are approved. As was mentioned earlier during citizen comments, there is no increases to the tax rate or to any fees. I will mention, since I've got the opportunity, the public hearing on the budget, on the draft FY22 budget is next Monday, which is the 19th at 6 o'clock in the board meeting room. And then the budget adoption meeting is scheduled for the following week on the 26th during the regular board meeting. It'll be at the 6 o'clock time frame. Back to the Commissioner of the Revenues. They continue to process state income tax returns. They are preparing, or they're actually auditing Schedule Cs and sending letters to those who are not licensed in the county. And part of that is also preparing delinquent business license renewal letters that'll be mailed out at a future date. And then they are updating personal property files in preparation for the purchase of decals. If there's no questions for Mr. Weitzel, I'll transition to the treasurer's update. And Mr. Travato wanted to communicate about the decals. As you know, the board approved an extension of the purchase of decals for 2021 calendar year to June 30th, 2021. I talked to her just before the meeting. She did indicate that she is getting fairly close to being ready to sell the decals. She didn't give me a time frame, but she said she is getting close. So she also wanted to communicate she is working with the state on the debt set-off collection. And so there's 474 filings that were submitted to the state, totaling over $78,000 that would come back to the locality to pay for delinquent taxes. And then she sent out letters to 104 citizens that were delinquent on real estate tax in the land use program and tax relief program. So those individuals have until June 1st to remain in that program and pay their outstanding debt. So if there's no questions for Ms. Travato, I'll transition to the fiscal services update. One thing that I did want to mention, per our local county code, we did have 9 invoices that we paid after March 8th. Some of that is linked to delays in the postal service and those getting to us in time to meet the regular board meeting or first board meeting. And so you can see that was for $8,742.60. It's got the details in the letter. After that, I'll transition to the revenue versus expenditure line chart that's in your packet. At this point, through March 2021, we typically this time of year, we'll start to see that expenditures exceed revenues for year-to-date totals. And that's in preparation for usually May, we start to see the real estate taxes come in, and then that's where revenues start to exceed expenditures. This year's been unique in that we've got CARES Act money. And so the majority of the CARES Act money that's come into the general fund is linked to public safety. That's almost $2.4 million. And so that is why you see revenues over expenditures at this point, and has been for several months. As far as our expenditures, we are above the projection. We're about $1.7 million above what's anticipated. Some of the changes that we've seen this year, you may recall for the PSA project, the Route 60 project, the board set aside about $1.3 million to finance part of the project that was not funded through financing. And so that's contributing. We've spent about $990,000 on that. You also may recall for the fire rescue budget that there's been 2 additional staff members that were hired this fiscal year that were not budgeted. We also had the payment, an additional quarterly allotment that was paid to volunteers that was linked to their response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Jail ops continues to be high. We are currently $231,000 above what we were same time last year. Recycling is up $131,000, and some of that is associated with the Fancy Hill site being online for the full fiscal year. And also the tipping fees went up prior to the start of the fiscal year, and so that's contributing. With that, if there's any questions on the line chart, I can certainly do my best to answer them. If not, we'll transition to the appropriation resolution. You can see there's $58,267 being requested. The first 4 line items are linked to the COVID-19 vaccination clinic that is being managed at the former Peebles and Gordman's building. And so we anticipate that once the project is complete, hopefully by June, that we'll get a public assistance grant reimbursement from FEMA for the full amount. And then lastly, the transfer to school fund ops, that's playing catch up on an approval that was done back in January. You may recall that the Maury River Middle School practice field went over budget, and back in January you did an appropriation resolution on the school side, and I'm just playing catch up on the general fund side, just to be in line with each other. With that, there's 548 invoices. I've taken the time to review taken some notes. So if there's any questions on that, I'll do my best to answer it. If not, my recommendation is to approve the appropriation resolution as presented.
All right, you've heard Mr. Bolster's recommendation. Are there any questions?
I have one, Mr. Chairman, just, Steve, in Fiscal Services Department, it lists, Roberts, former Cox auditors, obviously. Is that all the audits we do, or is that just the specific county audit in that line?
Right, that's the specific county audit. So if I can expand on that, so the jail gets their own invoice, the Blue Ridge Resource Authority gets their own invoice.
I was just making sure that was,
Yes, sir.
I wasn't here. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Hearing none. A motion to approve Mr. Bolster's request.
So moved.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And a second. Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, Mr. Bolster.
Thank you.
At this time, we got the VDOT row abandonment. Mr. Suter?
That's Ms. Huffman's going to do that.
Suffman?
I'm presenting, but it has been a team effort. Alvin Trout is also here virtually, I believe, to respond to questions or to present additional information. The overview is that VDOT's in the process of addressing some older route relocations. Normally, the addition for a relocation and replacement, the addition and abandonment would be done at the time that the project was completed. And this is one of those that they have found has not been processed. So VDOT's requesting that the old road bed for two sections of Route 703, that's Stewartsburg Road and Forest Grove Road, be abandoned in the vicinity of its intersection with Route 631, which is Old Buena Vista Road, and that the new road bed be added into the secondary system so that it appears accurately on VDOT's mapping database. There is a proposed resolution for the board's consideration. You also have a color-coded drawing included in your packet. The sections in red show the additions to the state system, and the sections in blue show what is to be abandoned. And that's described in the AM 4.3 form that's attached to the resolution. And so I'll be glad to answer questions, or you can direct them to Mr. Trout.
Any questions?
Does this require a public hearing?
No, sir, it does not. Just adoption of the resolution if the board is in favor.
I'll make a motion to adopt as presented.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And a second? Any further discussion? Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, Ms. Huffman.
Thank you.
VMI update?
Yes, as you know, we have a great deal of interaction with VMI, ranging from one that sometimes we forget is partnership in the 911 center to capital projects like the Chessie Trail Bridge over the South River and other things that pop up from time to time, such as VMI did a fantastic job and continues to helping us with the vaccination clinic and that whole community effort. So Colonel Dale Brown is VMI's local government liaison and is also highly involved in planning and implementation of capital projects. And I'd like to note, while that many of these projects by requirement are in the city of Lexington, the contractors do utilize county hotels, restaurants, building supply locations, and that type of thing. So these are very important. But Dale has asked to give us a little update and on projects that are ongoing right now, and probably a little bit of history as well. And he is joining us from South Carolina. Despite the picture there, he's down there chasing turkeys, but he is
Yeah.
on Zoom.
Yeah, that's my front porch view. So well, I appreciate it, Spencer. I mean, as Spencer said, part of my job as the Institute Planning Officer is local government. And this is a brief we've given to the city for many years. Of course, last year or two, it's been skipped because of COVID, but there's always been a desire on both sides, I think, to share this with the board. And so this year, having restarted with the city, I reached out to Spencer and we thought this would be good. So I'm going to go ahead and share a screen. And it's a PowerPoint presentation, not intended to put you to sleep, but it saves me a whole bunch of words. This is more information, so feel free to ask questions as I go. As Spencer mentioned, this obviously a lot of these projects happen within the city of Lexington on post, but the benefits, are across the region as we bring in contractors and designers from sometimes, a couple hours away. So as Spencer mentioned, I'm going to start with a little bit of history. I think that puts it in perspective, and then we'll touch on the active projects. First of all, we've been going through some technology changes or challenges with Stefan, but can everybody hear me okay?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, because I'm speaking on my phone and displaying with the computer. This is a slide I put together. I share it with all the alumni. I do an annual every spring, every fall alumni briefs. Everything that you see in orange is new construction that's happened since 2004. Everything that you see in blue has been renovated since 2004. In that time frame, between what's been completed and what's ongoing, there's just under $600 million worth of work that's been done on post. The items you see in yellow here are projects that are underway. And then you'll see some that are highlighted, they're kind of tan in the middle and pink on the outside. These are projects that have been planned and haven't been funded yet. So it's kind of, to an alumnus or someone who hadn't been on post for a while, it's kind of a way to inform them of how much work's been done since the 2004 timeframe when Vision 2039 kicked off. This is another way to look at it. If you look at, we came on board 2004, I started in 2005, and you go all the way through the timeline, all the way through the recessions, there's been projects, sometimes multiple projects going on simultaneously. Some of these are pretty big projects. And, and as the Corps grew from 1,300 to 1,700, a lot of these things had to change on post. What you see circled in green are the projects I'm going to talk about tonight. These are the projects that are ongoing, just to kind of not take you through every single project, but just focus on the ones that are active at the time. Again, just as a reminder, the ones that you see in pink here are the ones that are ongoing. Scott Ship Hall, the Aquatic Center, and then Superintendent's Quarters. And then the ones that are recently approved, authorized, if you will, by the state is Nichols Engineering and Leadership Development. And then what's not shown here is Safety and Security. But I'll touch on them. So again, we're going to be all over post again. And some of these you've already seen underway with Scott Ship and the Aquatic Center. Scott Ship, phase one is essentially complete. This is the 28,000 square foot addition and the re-renovation of the 1955 addition. This is a $43 million project. Phase two is underway, which is the original 1918 building. Finishing that up. The plan is we have that completed and probably available for the spring semester with probably a November, December timeframe completion. So This is moving right along at 77% complete, but that's where it's going. Some images. These are the renderings. I would have given you an actual image, but it's still surrounded by a construction fence. This is the new addition. The east entrance, what you see here is the Crozet Memorial. This is where Crozet is actually buried. There was some shifting of this to get it centered. It's across from Crozet Hall. This is essentially complete, as is this entrance here. Again, the photographs aren't caught up to the rendering simply because of the construction fencing, but this is moving along well. Chessie Nature Trail, the bridge at South River. As you know, Spencer mentioned, a lot of this is federal funds, but a lot of it is local match from not only VMI, but from the county and the city of Buena Vista and Lexington. So Wiley and Wilson, designer, F&B contractors, you know, it's about 20% complete, a little over. They're working with Dominion right now. There's some clearance issues, so they're working through that again. We thought we had it down, and they came back with some additional requests. You know, the plan right now is to have that completed sometime early this summer. Kind of give you an image. It's a little bit different in height, as I said, where they're working with Dominion Power to get the height between here and the power lines to meet their code requirements. But we're moving our way forward on this project. Lackey Park parking. This is out by the high school and the VMI physical plant at Hinty Hall. It's well underway. It's a $3.5 million project. It's roughly 40% complete. This will be the new home for cadet cars. So all the cars that are currently parked at Ollie's, as well as all the first class cars that are parked on post, will be moved out to this location. Here's a rendering of the parking lot. You can see the high school is up in the right-hand corner with Hines Lanes, the Armory, and Hinty Hall. If you've come down Hines Lane, this hillside's all been torn up. Now, what's interesting is that this used to be heavily forested. It was planted back in, I think, the 80s by the Department of Forestry. When this project kicked off, we were working with them, and they actually came in and harvested all this timber that they planted back in the 80s. So we worked closely with them rather than just let the contractor get rid of all the trees. We harvested them through the Department of Forestry. So it was a win-win. Core Physical Training Facilities Phase 3 Aquatic Center. This is a $44 million project. It's the one on Main Street that's underway. HKS is the designer. Whiting Turner, the same team who did Core Physical Training Facility Phase 1, is doing Phase 3. About 10 million of this is donor funds. The rest is state. It's going to be another large facility. It's going to be an Olympic-sized pool. Physical education will use it during the day. What's interesting, in the existing pool, they can teach one class. Here, they'll be able to do multiple classes for physical education, making it much more effective for them. Efficient is the word I was looking for. Obviously, there'll be a lot of cadet activities, ROTC. You know, we do a lot of Navy SEALs BUDS training, getting kids ready to go for Navy SEALs training. So they'll be doing that, as well as the NCAA sports. The pool will be big enough, divided enough where they can actually hold water polo and swimming practice simultaneously in the pool. So very neat facility. This is what it'll look like moving south into Lexington. You're looking at basically you're taking the picture from the existing Core Physical Training facility looking south. This will be a new main interest. It does integrate the Legion building. It becomes offices and classrooms. They are attached to the building. And then the pool will actually be located behind the creek, and the support facilities, the locker rooms and such, will be spanning the creek. This gives you an idea of what the pool will look like inside. What you see is movable platforms, 2 of them in the pool. One will separate the deep end where all the diving occurs. These will move up, have the capability to move up and down. What you see here, believe it or not, NCAA right now does not compete lengthwise in a 50 full-size Olympic pool. They're doing 50 yards. So this is set up, could be for competition, but with the bulkhead in the middle, you can actually run water polo and swimming practice and diving practice at the same time. Then you can also see how physical education can run multiple swim classes for PE. So going to be very useful for VMI, very efficient, and help with scheduling. Superintendent's quarters, 412 parade. It's a $2 million budget. This is out to bid right now, Glave and Holmes. We're looking to get started with that soon. The bid should be opening up any day, I think next week, if not this week. So construction start in May with estimated completion sometime early next summer. Post safety and security. This is a $10 million state project. This has been appropriated by the state, but it hasn't been authorized yet for funding. So we haven't started the selection of a design and construction team, but what it does is, and I'm going to skip to the image. We get a lot of high ranking visitors that come to post with special security requirements, as well as there are times when we're doing training, et cetera, where we need to be able to isolate portions of the post. So this creates an inner loop in red where we can isolate the parade ground and the core. So if they're having a formation or an activity on the parade ground in group, we're one of very few schools that the entire student body gets together twice a day minimum for breakfast roll call, supper roll call. At the same time, the blue represents an outer loop. So if there are changes, like you get the vice president, the president come in, we have the ability to close down the entire post for security purposes if necessary. And the gates and all that have been positioned based on concepts. A lot of design work left to do to figure out exactly what they're going to look like. Renovate and expand engineering lab facilities. It's a $51 million project. With the core expansion to 1700 and the STEM, science, technology, education, math, those growth in those programs up to almost 60% of the core. So really had to expand the engineering lab facilities, even though we had renovated those back in the 2005, 2006 timeframe. So this constructs a 33,000 square foot addition, and it renovates for efficiency the existing facility. Again, this is another one that's been appropriated for both the design and construction, but we're waiting approval from the state. This is Nichols Engineering Building where it exists. This is Preston Library on the right, Jackson Memorial Hall on the left. So what this project does is it constructs an addition back into the right of JM Hall from the parade, from Nichols Engineering from the parade ground. An addition here to Morgan Hall. At the same time, since this follows the Aquatic Center, we're going to use this project to remove the Cock Hall swimming pool. And this will give us a chance to reconnect the main parade ground all the way down through the pedestrian bridge to the stadium and Main Street. Open up those vistas, those historic vistas. Just another view from basically standing in front of Preston Library. This is the main existing Nichols Engineering Building. This is the new addition. What was interesting is there's actually a structure here. This is the roof deck, but when we got into the concept, what we found was that was always designed for additional floors. And so we were able to expand this up 2 floors at the same time behind there from Engineering Drive. We're going to go up multiple floors, not just 2. Center for Leadership and Ethics, CLE Phase 2, Leadership Development Facility. This is an expanding program at VMI Leadership Development right now. They're teaching the classes in the existing CLE, but it wasn't designed for that. The budget right now is only $2 million because they've only given us enough money for detailed planning. This will be roughly a $50 million project, plus or minus once we get through it. It's a brand new 66,000 square foot facility. Obviously, since again, it's been appropriated, but we're waiting for approval from the state. We haven't selected an engineer or construction manager. Give you an idea where it's going. Right here, number 11 is Smith Hall. Number 12 is the existing Marshall Library. Behind it is the existing Center for Leadership and Ethics. What this does is expands the green space between, constructs a new leadership development facility, and connects it into the existing Center for Leadership and Ethics via walkway. What you see here is a parking garage for roughly 450 cars. When we did the concept for the leadership development, we went ahead and did a concept for a parking structure. The state, unfortunately, does not fund parking structures, so VMI is in the process of trying to source the funds, figuring out what we can do in order to pay for the parking. We can't put this burden totally on today's cadets. So we have to figure out the best way to move forward on that with that, since we don't have the ability to use state funds. Give you an idea what it looks like. This is the existing Center for Leadership and Ethics, Marshall Hall. This is that connecting. This is the new leadership development facility with this long lawn, which we tend to refer as the outdoor room. This will bring in additional theater space. It's the new home for the VMI Museum, giving them expanded area, as well as additional classrooms, meeting rooms, etc., inside the facility. From the parade ground, when you came up Anderson Drive before, you ended up in a parking lot. With the improvements that have been done on Saunders Drive coming in from Jordan's Post, a lot more people are coming into VMI that route. So what this does is it gives that route across up Saunders, across the new bridge that's now rated to handle buses and heavy traffic, puts them in the traffic circle. What you see here is the ability to have bus drop off, things like that. So on alumni weekends, conferences, etc., buses are not going to be routed up through town. They have the ability now to come in through Jordan's Point, up through Saunders and Anderson to arrive on post. And now you have a sense of arrival. It's not the main entrance, but still you're not ending up in a parking lot. One of the projects that I've been working, we got a request from the Virginia Army National Guard out located behind the high school. There's a national program to consolidate the Guard armories across the United States. Virginia was pushing this hard to get on the front end of this. So they're looking at an expansion. This is their existing facility in white here in the middle with their existing parking lot. And they are expanding the facilities as well as adding additional parking. But as back here, with that, they have to meet a certain standoff distance for force protections. And they were estimated they needed an additional 85 feet. And this cuts into the high school. And obviously, VMI, we've transferred that property to the high school as well as we've transferred property to the Guard. But if either one goes away, it reverts back to VMI. So the Guard approached us and I opened up the door to the superintendent, brought him into the discussion. This was their initial planning. We've developed an MOU and basically came to an agreement that if they could relocate their fence away from the practice fields, that the school would agree not to park any vehicles in this location. And we came to that agreement. Based upon that, the Guard hired or worked with Department of Real Estate Services for the state to have it surveyed. What they were actually able to do is that 85 foot drop down to 62 feet from the existing line. And so we're working through that process here. And then the Guard, now that the survey's been approved by both us and the superintendent, they're working up the real estate documents to make this a reality. So it's good. The option is if we didn't find room to expand the Guard here in the county, then we would have lost the Guard to another location. And I don't think anybody wanted to lose the Guard here at Lexington. So finding a way to accommodate their growth, I think, is a win-win situation. And that's it. I just want to wrap up. The construction, it's a lot of money, and that's part of it. But it's been a lot of turmoil, not only for VMI but for the community as a whole. And having managed the construction for the first 12 years, I can tell you everybody's been really, really supportive and accommodating. I guess as the dust flies and the trucks roll in and out of town, and et cetera. So part of this is to show appreciation for the community as a whole and their support for what VMI has been able to accomplish in the last 16, 17 years. And with that, any questions?
Any questions for Colonel Brown? Hearing none, thank you, Colonel. We appreciate your presentation, and we appreciate working with BMI and helping any way we can.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the consideration of the reassessment RFPs, Mr. Bolster.
Yes, sir. If you don't mind, I got an input from Betty. She popped in here just really quickly just to give a notice on the decals. And she said that decals are ready to go tomorrow. Folks should be receiving a notice, the decal notice by Thursday of this week. So just I'll pass that along.
I'll be looking for mine.
All right, if you go to the agenda report, try to be chronological in my communication. You may recall back in early February, staff came to the board and asked them to consider issuing a request for proposal versus an invitation for bid for completion of the general reassessment. That was approved, and back on February 12th, we issued an RFP number 2021-02-002. That was out on the street for a month. That was advertised locally in print. It was also on the county website and also on the EVA website, which is the state procurement platform. We did have 4 firms submit proposals by the due date in due time, which was March 12th at 2 o'clock. The evaluation committee members that included Dr. Lyons, Mr. Suter, Mr. Weitzel, Ms. Tomlin, and I, we did a preliminary ranking of the 4 based on the criteria that was stated in the RFP. Based on the initial scoring, it was determined by the committee to interview the top 3 proposers. The committee did complete firm interviews on Monday, April 5th with those 3 firms. And then what you see listed in that table is the rank order, both the evaluation of the proposal and the interview. And you can see that Wingate Appraisal Service was ranked number 1. So the recommendation of staff is to receive the report, discuss as necessary, or ask any kind of questions you may have. And we are asking the board to consider accepting the evaluation committee's final ranking of the interview proposers. We're also asking the board to authorize the county administrator to enter into negotiations based on the final ranking of the received proposals. And if negotiations are successful, to return back to the board with a contract for consideration.
Any questions for Mr. Bolster or Mr. Suter? You've heard Mr. Bolster's request. Is there a motion to approve the resolution? Do we have a second? And a second. Okay. Any further comments? Ms. Ayers?
Aye.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yep.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, Mr. Suter. Cars Creek Community Market Outdoor Event Application.
Members of the board, Mr. Steve Hart has submitted an application for outdoor events to hold farmers markets in the Cars Creek area. This would be per chapter 4 amusement and entertainment, section 5 farmers market of the Rockbridge County Code. The property is located at 2766 West Midland Trail. Is located on the intersection of West Midland Trail and Fredericksburg Road. This will be the second year of the community market. The application for outdoor events is an annual application, therefore it's required to be submitted and approved by the Board of Supervisors before each season. Mr. Hart has joined the meeting via Zoom. If the board would like, Mr. Hart can review additional details of the application or answer any questions y'all may have. He's prepared to do that if y'all like the board additional information.
Is there anyone want to hear from Mr. Hart? I've been out to the market in the past. It's very well done, very well organized, and they do a great job. I'd be happy to entertain a motion to approve the application.
So moved.
We have a second? Second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, and very thankful that Mr. Hart will continue this. It's well done.
Thank you.
Cigarette tax discussion.
Yes, in January, the board discussed the potential to implement a cigarette tax, which was made available to counties in legislation adopted last year by the General Assembly. And after that discussion, the board determined to consider setting a rate of 30 cents per pack, which is consistent with the rate being considered by others in the region, including Lexington, Buena Vista, and Augusta County. Another thing that the board determined to do was consider an implementation date no earlier than 6 months after adoption, and to move ahead individually as a locality rather than to join a regional board with other localities. Then the General Assembly kind of threw us a curveball. They began considering a requirement in the General Assembly's legislative session that localities from regional boards or form regional boards of at least 10 members. And we pressed the pause button until the legislation was resolved. Ultimately, the legislation was passed encouraging but not requiring localities to form regional boards. Locally and regionally, localities are opting to avoid the overhead and additional trouble of setting up boards who understand the reasoning behind it. But we are recommending kind of do our own thing, at least initially in this regard. And to recap the process, the county would need to procure the services of a stamp producer to design and produce stamps. Commissioner David Weitzel's office would then be in charge of selling the stamps or imprints to wholesalers or retailers for application to the packs of cigarettes. And Sheriff Funkhauser has agreed to periodically have deputies visit retailers just to ensure compliance and take a look. I did want to point out that we have received communication, as I've reported in the past, from the Virginia Wholesalers and Distributors Association and the National Association of Tobacco Outlets opposing the implementation of the cigarette tax. If and when the board considers an ordinance for public hearing, we will include your comments. I've saved those. Ms. Huffman has drafted an ordinance for your review. It's in your package. If you are in favor of going to public hearing with a proposed 30 cent per tax or 30 cent per pack tax, you would need to simply authorize advertisement for public hearing on April 26th at the board's next meeting. Please note that staff and the commissioner's office recommend not less than 6 months between adoption and implementation to provide time to procure stamping services and to get the other processes in place. Should the board ultimately approve after public hearing, that would put us around November the 1st. I talked with Commissioner Weitzel, and he would much prefer January 1 start of a new tax year. But he would be okay implementing in 6 months, which would be around November 1st. I'd be happy to try to take any questions you might have. Ms. Huffman put a lot of time into this as well, and we've talked about it at multiple meetings. So we are both here to answer any questions that you might have.
Have the surrounding localities approved this tax yet?
Amherst did it first. That was back in December, I believe, for a July 1 date. Augusta County is they have discussed it, and they will. I'm fairly certain that they will be moving ahead with it. Rockingham, Botetourt, at last discussion, we're discussing it. They hadn't moved ahead yet. Allegheny was in a wait to see mode a little bit. They didn't opt to do it the discussion for the July 1 implementation, but I have talked to the county administrator and they will be discussing.
Do you know where Lexington and Buena Vista is on the?
Lexington and Buena Vista are in discussion. Now, I can't speak for the councils, but in discussions with the city managers, they are in agreement that we all move ahead as much as we can. At the same time, they are recommending, or at least Mr. Scudder did before Mr. Tyree. Haven't talked to Mr. Tyree about it yet, but Jim Hallett with the city of Lexington is recommending 30 cents. And they were actually leaning a little bit more towards the max that the counties could do, but I think we've discussed, which is 40 cents, but we've all agreed as managers that 30 cents would be good for everybody, or to keep it equalized and do it about the same time.
Right. I've been contacted by some local convenience store operators, and they're while they're not against the tax, their concern is that we make sure that the surrounding localities are doing a similar thing. Otherwise, people would go elsewhere to buy their cigarettes, which wouldn't hurt, except most people just don't go somewhere to buy cigarettes. They usually pull up, fill their tank with gas, go inside, get some chips and sodas and cigarettes and a number of other things. And if they could save, $3 on a carton of cigarettes and only drive a mile, then they're probably going to spend a lot more than just their cigarette money in those stores. So I think it's crucial.
Well, a lot of people buy cartons, though,
Right.
and so they will travel for cheaper prices.
And I have discussed it again with, one of the concerns was, of course, what's Augusta County doing, and they are looking at 30 cents, and one of the drivers there is, I believe, Stanton and Waynesboro are both 30 cents, so they're trying to equalize up there.
I just think we need to keep an eye on that.
It was my understanding that the state wouldn't let us move forward unless Lexington and Buena Vista were going.
No. We've got full authority as a county now. The cities just hadn't implemented them.
I know you mentioned Botetourt, but any idea what rate they're looking at?
I don't know. I really don't. They're still early in the discussions with the last discussions that I've had. I would assume they would be looking more toward Roanoke, Salem, and that would be my assumption.
I'm just making sure, constituent questions, this is for only smoked tobacco. It's for cigarettes.
Yes.
To be clear, smoked tobacco is not covered by this.
Correct.
Which the state is looking at. They just haven't issued that yet.
That
It's true. Yeah. Like, yeah. So it's not that won't be coming on board soon.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, we need to decide whether to have a public hearing in 2 weeks. What's the pleasure of the board?
It's only just for a public hearing, correct? I mean, my concern, especially where my district is what Botetourt does for stores in my district, So I'm fine having a public hearing, but I'm not fine moving ahead until I find out more information about what Botetourt is.
And I'll check, but I may or may not have that. I mean, the answer may be that they're not moving ahead now, or they are. I mean, I will certainly check into it, but until, again, discussing it with the county administrator is one thing. It's still got to go before their board, just like you understand.
You're also not bound forevermore by whatever rate you sell. If you go through this same process again, you can make a change. You can adjust those rates depending on how you see the impact.
So the public hearing would be to take input on a 30 cents a pack cigarette tax to be implemented January 1st, 2022. And if we approve that, and let's say for some unknown reason, 2 or 3 of the surrounding localities decide not to go through with it, we still have to, we can change it any time before it's ever even implemented.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, do we want to have a public hearing? If so, I'll entertain a motion.
I agree with Mr. McDaniel. I think we should have public hearing. Public input is something we always seek.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, so I move that we set the public
Okay,
hearing
thank
as you described, as the ordinance is written.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yeah.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you, Ms. Huffman. The vacation of the street/alley on the Locker property.
You have included in your agenda a proposed ordinance for vacation of the alley that runs between the lots in block 66 and the street running between blocks 49 and block 66. All of which are related to the acquisition of the Locker property. At the March 8th meeting, the board authorized exercising the option to purchase. In addition to obtaining a deed and acquiring title from Mr. Locker, it's necessary to vacate these right-of-way interests that are unnamed, unused, unopened, not maintained. They're just paper streets and alleys. But they exist on our tax records and on paper, and therefore are required to be vacated in order for the county to be able to use them for the solid waste collection center. So this is the first step in the process for vacating. It requires a public hearing. The proposed ordinance is ready, so if it's acceptable to the board, the request is to schedule public hearing for April 26th.
Any questions from Ms. Huffman? Hearing none. Do we have a motion to schedule a public hearing on the 26th?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to review the monthly staff reports? If so, would like a motion to approve? And do we have a second?
Second.
And a second. Okay, Ms. Ayers?
Aye.
Mr. McDaniel? Mr. Day? Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. Any board comments? Just remind everyone of we'll be back again on next Monday. And that's at 6 o'clock.
I have a couple of
Ms. Ayers?
committee reports. Rockbridge Area Tourism Board has approved a sponsorship initiative allocating funds to support local events. Tourism funds will be allocated exclusively within Rockbridge County, Lexington, and Buena Vista. Event organizers may apply for a maximum of $3,000. Round one is for events occurring between July 1 and December 31st, 2021, and the Tourism Board will award funds on how the event aligns with the tourism goals and objectives. Awards will be announced May 21st Round 2 is for events occurring between January 1 and June 30th, and each round has $9,000 to distribute. And this is the tourism board's effort to assist local organizers in their events to get them back up and running, realizing that so many of them have lost their events from last year. On the RARO board, RARO has posted the executive director position. The RARO board expects to begin interviewing by June 15th with the hope to hire by late summer. 3 of our board members' terms will expire on about June 30th, I think. And the RARO board has asked to extend the term deadline until after the hiring process has been completed. And so I was hoping that this board would see that and have no problem with letting us get through the hiring process before we chose board members. Okay. Any questions about that? No.
Any other board comments?
I have no problem with that. In the past, when we've had the vacancy met, we haven't appointed anybody, so those people continue anyway, so I guess we could do it that way.
If they're willing to continue until someone is appointed.
And actually, I had forgotten because I had talked to Bob earlier today. His representative is actually moving from his district to Walker's Creek. And he does a very fine job, as Bob can attest to. And we would like to, until Bob says otherwise, keep him in the Walker's, even though he'd be representing. So Jay, you would have 2 people in your Walker's Creek district, if that's okay with you for a while.
Sure. Yeah. We got Mr. Watkins originally was when I couldn't find somebody from Walks Creek anyway. So I appreciate his service.
Any other comments? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn? Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. McDaniel?
Yeah.
Mr. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Day?
Yes.
Ms. Ayers?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes, we stand adjourned.